Well, that sucked. Burn the black jerseys. That's all I got to say. This is Top Dogs. My name is Rob Doster. This is the Field of 68. And I guess we got to talk about it, right? UConn in their Big East Conference opening game lost on the road to Seton Hall. It's the third straight time they've lost at Seton Hall. It is the 16th time in the last 20 years that UConn has lost their conference opening game. Final score was 75-60. UConn was up 20-10 at one point in the first half, and it just kind of completely melted away from there. There are a couple of things that I want to say about this game, and a lot of things that we have to talk about, and a lot of takeaways that we need to have. But first and foremost, I want to make 2 points. The first point is that the single most concerning thing coming out of this game and coming out of this performance is the health of Donovan Clingan. I think what we saw in the final 6 minutes of the first half and what we saw in the second half was the value that he provides in terms of just being 7'3" Donovan Clingan, just being the wall of Bristol in the paint. Samson Johnson is a really talented basketball player, and he is a guy that has a good future in this sport, but he is not the defensive presence that Donovan Clingan is, and he does not bring that level of stability at the 5 spot and at the rim that Donovan Clingan brings. And I don't think that can be overstated. The offensive end of the floor is not the issue. The issue is on the defensive end of the floor. The issue is that this is a UConn team that is not a great perimeter defense. And we saw it with what Seton Hall wanted to do offensively, right? This wasn't a situation where they were jacking up threes. This wasn't a situation where they even took a lot of threes. They were 3 for 8 from beyond the arc. They were able to put the ball on the floor and get to the rim whenever they wanted. They got 14 offensive rebounds and basically matched UConn. They had a 50% offensive rebounding rate in this game. It was 14-14. And I think so much of that is a result of Donovan Clingan missing a significant amount of the time. So much of their success getting points in the paint is a result of Donovan Clingan missing a significant amount of time in that game due to injury and due to foul trouble, right? And I don't think it can be overstated how important it is to be able to get him back healthy at some point. Now, as of this recording, it is 12:35 in the AM on Thursday morning. I just finished doing After Dark and doing the show there and doing Last Call over on Stadium. But I wanted to get in and record this really quick because it's something it's just a rant that I had to get out, right? It's something that I had to kind of talk about. So I think it's also very important, while acknowledging how valuable Clingan is to what UConn wants to do on the defensive end of the floor, there is a level of protection that this training staff, that everybody has to have, just to be accurate in terms of what was said about him and what happened after the game. Dan Hurley went into his press conference and said it is a sprained ankle. He said that he is unsure of what the specific status is, which is not uncommon. That Donovan Clingan left the game in a boot, which is not uncommon, and is something where we did not get anything beyond that, which is also not uncommon. You know, when you have a player with an ankle injury or a foot injury, and they are coming out of a game where they just suffered that injury, you want to put the boot on it out of precaution. Sometimes that is to reduce the swelling because it's a bad injury. Sometimes that is to reduce the wear and tear on it when that player is walking on it, when it's not that serious of an injury. You're just trying to make sure they can get back quicker than you would necessarily expect. So I don't think there's too much that you can read into it. It's one of those things where you got to wait till the next day, see how bad it feels, see how bad he is when it comes to walking on it, see if it's something where he can run, see if it's something where he can play, cut, move, do all of those good things. I do think it is a good sign that Hurley said that Clingan wanted to get back into the game afterwards. You saw him on the bench. He didn't have ice on it. He was bouncing his foot up and down. He was walking a little bit. And the trainers were the ones, according to Hurley, that said no and that he was not going to be allowed to get back into the game. So that makes me believe it's not necessarily that serious, but it's also something where I'm recording this again 4 hours after the game. And by the time you're listening to this in the morning, maybe more news has broken in terms of just how serious that injury is. So time will tell. We will see. But I don't think I know that what we learned in this performance is that the presence of Donovan Clingan is potentially more important maybe than we even thought about. So I think it's really important to just kind of start there. He's got to be healthy. He's a 7'3" dude that has dealt with a stress reaction / stress fracture, I guess, depending on how you want to phrase it, in one foot, a toe injury in the other foot, and now a sprained ankle on one of his feet as well. That's a lot of lower extremity injuries over the course of 3 months for a guy that is 7'3". That is something that is a concern, and that is something where I do believe at some point, if you are the UConn staff and you are the UConn training staff, you need to make sure that you are protecting a player from himself, because a lot of times some guys are going to want to try to play through an injury when they shouldn't necessarily be playing through that injury. So that's something I think is really important to keep in mind. The other thing that I did want to mention is that this game came after a relatively intense non-conference period. It came after they traveled back from the other side of the country where they smacked Gonzaga. And it came on the road in a Big East Conference opening game that is 5 days before Christmas. These are the kind of games that teams can lose, right? These are the kind of games where teams don't necessarily show up. These are the kind of games where it can be difficult to get up for them. I thought Alex Carabin had a really telling quote in the post-game press conference. I believe it was Dave Borges that tweeted this out. He basically said, you can't show up to a road game in Big East play and not be ready and expect to not get your ass kicked, more or less. I'm kind of paraphrasing there, but that's basically the point that he made. If you show up and you're not ready to play, you're going to get your butt whooped playing in this league. And that is 100% true. And that is something that we 100% saw take place in Newark on Wednesday night. The bottom line is this: Seton Hall was the tougher team. We can sit here and we can dive into some of the issues that they had on the offensive end of the floor. We can talk about the zone and the matchup zone that Seton Hall threw with them. And I can make some points about how Seton Hall was doing their switching defense, and they were switching man to man. They played a matchup zone. It makes it really difficult for UConn to be able to run their stuff, and it makes it really difficult for them to be able to do this, and it makes it difficult for them to do that. The single most important point to take away from this game is that Seton Hall was the tougher team, and the tougher team won this game. And I think that is basically what happened. Seton Hall showed up ready to play, and it looked like UConn showed up thinking that they were going to be able to walk in there and win a basketball game. That was to basically just win a game by showing up. And that's not going to happen when you're playing in the Big East, and that's not going to happen when you are playing a team with as much talent as Seton Hall has. And I know you might want to laugh at it. I know you might say that there were 7-4 coming into this game, but Kadari Richardson is a very good player. Alamir Dawes is a very good player. Dylan Adaiwusu is a very good player. Those are guys that are old, they are tough, they are physical, and they have been around the Big East for a while. So they know how to play basketball. And if you're going to go up and play against them and not show up ready to play, you're not going to win the basketball game. It is just kind of that simple. So those are the two things that I wanted to just kind of get out there at the top. The last point that I want to make, and I think this is the single most important one. This is one game. It is a road game. It is league play. It is the Big East. We saw Marquette get smacked at Providence. We saw Creighton lose at home against Villanova. We've seen teams like this struggle in league play in certain situations. I mentioned it at the Open. Only 4 times in the last 20 years has UConn won their conference opener. They have as many national championships in the last 20 years as they do conference opening wins. In 2014, when UConn won the national title, they lost their Big East opener to Houston on the road. In 2011, when they won the national title, they lost their Big East opener to Pitt on the road. In 2009, when they made the Final Four, they lost their Big East opener to Georgetown at home. it's one of those things that happens. It's conference play, it's league play. It is what it is. And I think that a lot of the stuff that we're going to talk about in this podcast and on the show should all be taken within the very specific context that what happened in the first 11 games of the season should not be ignored. This is still a national championship caliber team. This is still a Final Four caliber team. This is still a team that is good enough to be able to win the Big East regular season title, to be able to win the Big East tournament, to be able to do all the things they want to be able to do. But we need to be able to put that into a context and be able to have a conversation about what happened in this game. So I hope that people understand that I'm not just talking out of both sides of my mouth, but we can critique what happened in this game, which I promise you Dan Hurley is going to do in the film session. I would love to be a fly on the wall in that film session. I would hate to be a player that was sitting in that film session. So let's talk a little bit about what happened here. As you guys know by now, we've partnered with BetMGM Sportsbook for this college basketball season. We're going to be using BetMGM lines to make all of our picks and predictions throughout the college basketball season. And we are going to have special offers for you, the listeners and the viewers on the Field of 68 each and every week during the season. If you haven't signed up with BetMGM yet, use the bonus code FIELD1500 and you will get up to a $1,500 first bet offer on your first wager on BetMGM Sportsbook. Here's what you got to do. Download the BetMGM app. Sign up using the bonus code FIELD1500. Deposit at least $10 and place your first wager on any game. You will receive up to $1,500 in bonus bets if that bet loses. Just make sure you use the bonus code FIELD1500 when you sign up. And remember, BetMGM is now available under one wallet in select states. As a New Jersey resident, this is super convenient for me when I have to go cover games in New York or Philly. When crossing state borders, just log into your existing account instead of having to create new accounts in each state that you go to. And most importantly, I got to let you know, we do have some fun stuff coming up for this college basketball season. Bet insurance tokens, college hoops odds boosts, my personal favorite, parlay odds boosts. So download the BetMGM app today. I do think that, so I want to start with this. At the start of the season, I kind of got like ripped for this and made fun of for this. And I don't understand why people took me to task for it. But at the start of the year, I said that there were two issues that this group has in terms of the way that the roster was constructed that could be exploited. One of them was a lack of top-end athleticism when it comes to perimeter defenders, right? It's easier than it should be for teams to be able to beat UConn defenders off of the bounce. Some of that doesn't matter when you have Donovan Clingan at the basket and at the rim, swatting stuff away and being all 7'3" with a ridiculous wingspan. But when he's not there, you can see those issues kind of come to light, right? And I think that we really saw that tonight. The other issue is a lack of playmaking off the bounce. You know, if you're able to switch what UConn or switch against them defensively in a man-to-man and half court, and you are able to take them out of what they want to run and force them to not just run offense in the half court, but force them to have to play one-on-one. They don't really have that many guys that can break people down and make things easy for other players, right? Tristan Newton can do it, but he's not necessarily like at his best when it's ISO one-on-one, beat a guy, go make a play, make something easy for somebody else. He's more of a scorer at heart than anything. Like he can make plays, but he's more of a scorer. Cam Spencer, another guy, not exactly built to be able to break people down, beat them off the dribble, explode to the rim, go make a play, right? He can do it, but that's not what he is necessarily best at. I think Steph Castle probably is, but because of his lack of shooting, it's very hard for defenses to be forced out to guard him. So it's hard for him to be able to turn a corner and create a situation where he is got an advantage and whatnot. So I think both of those issues really came to light because of a number of different factors. One of them is that Seton Hall is a really tough team that was playing their ass off at home. One of them is that this is a team that is able to kind of switch 1 through 4 and make life difficult. One of them is that you got dudes like Dre Davis and Kadari Richmond that are just 6'6" monsters that can guard anyone from Alex Carabin to Tristan Newton. It's not really a problem. So there's a lot of ways that they can kind of match up. And it's just, it's part of why it was effective is that this is a matchup thing. UConn didn't show up ready to play. UConn lost their star center to take away some of their advantage. And this is the result of what happens when things like that. So I'm not necessarily super concerned about it, but it just kind of, to me, highlighted some of the red flags that I had about this group coming in to the season. The other big issue I have is, and I want to kind of dive a little bit deeper into this point, and it's something where I don't necessarily have an answer for it yet. I don't necessarily know if this is something that we should be really concerned about, or if this is just something where this is kind of the state of college basketball and the state of where we are. So Andrew Mayweather brought this to my attention. I'm sorry, Andrew Merriweather. He is a guy that used to be a manager and a walk-on at Duke, and he used to be a guy, I think he was a GA at Duke, and now he's an analytics guy on doing stuff from the media side. And UConn right now is getting more than 15 what Synergy considers unguarded jump shots and unguarded three-point attempts per game this season, which is significantly more than any other high major team is getting. They are 206th out of 362 teams, averaging 1.07 points per possession on those uncontested open jump shots that they are getting. So the question that I'm kind of finding myself wondering, right? What we've heard from Hurley before is that they haven't seen us when we're able to make jump shots yet. And I'm kind of sitting here like, okay, have we not been able to see this team make open jump shots, or is this just not a great shooting team where coaches are making the decision, we're going to dare them to beat us from the perimeter because we don't think that they can do something else? I think that it is the former, but I don't think that it is necessarily a coincidence that coaches are letting them have these open shots and UConn is missing these open shots. And what I'm trying to say is that I am buying UConn as a really good shooting team when it comes to 3, maybe 4 positions, right? I think we know what Cam Spencer is as a jump shooter. I think we've seen enough to say we know what Tristan Newton is as a jump shooter. I think that Alex Carabin is better than what the numbers are that he's put up this season. And I'm willing to buy into the idea that Solo Ball is going to figure it out at some point, be a knockdown shooter, right? But Donovan Clingan is not exactly a floor spacer. Samson Johnson is not exactly a floor spacer. Hassan Diarra is not exactly a floor spacer. We know Steph Castle isn't a floor spacer. Those aren't the guys that you necessarily want taking open threes, but when you don't have to guard them, it kind of clogs things up. So I think the story is the book is still out on that take, and the book is still out on how we should feel about that situation. But I do think one of the things that I'm going to be focusing on when I watch this group play for probably the next 2 weeks is, are they open for a reason? And I am very curious to see what I will take away as I kind of watch the tape and watch the film and think about that a little bit. I'm not ready to say that this is a team where the coaches are specifically daring them to shoot, but I don't think it's necessarily something that's out of the question. So that will be something that is interesting to watch. A couple other takes that I had. The timing of this ankle thing for Donovan is just so frustrating, man, because he was really starting to find a way to figure this thing out. It seemed like he was really getting comfortable as someone that UConn would be able to establish in the post, as someone that UConn could use as the linchpin of their offense, as someone that UConn was willing to throw the ball into. I mean, he had 14 points and 7 boards in 14 minutes today. Blocked a couple shots, got 5 offensive rebounds. He was really damn good. And to see him be able to work all the way through the injuries he had at the start of the season, get back to kind of finally looking like himself, and then having that all go away because he just took a weird step on a weird possession in a game. It's just so frustrating. I feel for him. And I know I'm hoping that he's going to be fine when it's all said and done, and that this won't be something that kind of derails his season or UConn seasons, but stranger things have happened. My other biggest takeaway was just that he might be the most valuable player in college basketball because without him, UConn just doesn't have an answer in there. You know, Sampson was he was not good. And I'm trying to avoid allowing the cervezas to infringe on what my opinion is here. And I'm not going to sit here and just kill the kid because he's out there busting his ass and doing the best that he can, but he was not good tonight, and he needs to be better, and he needs to be more of a presence, and he needs to be someone that they can rely on to be able to be some level of rim protection, some level of offensive presence, some level of catch the ball when you're at the rim, some level of finish when you're all by yourself down there. So I think it's really important that he's able to get better, and that's something that I think will be very impactful for what this program is moving forward. I also think Steph Castle's just not quite there yet. And it's the same thing with solo ball. Like, they are freshmen. They're going to have moments where they're really high and moments where they're really low. And that's just the natural evolution of freshmen. And the thing about them is that you want to be able to give them the minutes and give them the playing time so that when you look up in February and March, there are much more of the highs than the lows, and the lows aren't anywhere near as low as what they were at the start of the year. And I don't think either of them played particularly well tonight. I don't think anybody on the roster played particularly well tonight outside of Donovan Clingan. But I mean, I don't really know what else there is to say beyond that. This was not it was a quintessential Shaheen Holloway, Seton Hall, Shaheen Holloway from St. Peter's, Shaheen Holloway, tough, rugged Queens. Like, this is exactly what you would expect out of a Seton Hall team. And I'm going to sit here and say right now that I think that this loss and Marquette's loss and Creighton's loss, I think that says significantly more about the depth of the Big East than it does about how good the top of the Big East actually is. There are some things that that Marquette needs to work out. There are certainly things that UConn needs to work out. There are some things that make me question Creighton a little bit this year, but Villanova, there's a reason why some people had them projected as a top 15 team heading into the season. There's a reason why people had Providence projected as a top 25 team heading into the season, right? Seton Hall, you can question them all you want. That's a bunch of 22 and 23-year-old dudes that have been through some wars, have been through some battles, that actually had an offseason to work with their coach, and that has a coach that demands a certain level of toughness and physicality and intensity from them. So frustrating loss for sure. Annoying when you work at a company that has two Seton Hall alums and has Jeff Goodman, 100%. Something where I'm going to overreact and sit here and say that UConn season is over. Not publicly. I'm only going to do that when I'm screaming into the mirror in the bathroom by myself. So onward and upward. They play again on Saturday. They get this is all you need to know about the Big East is that you come off of a loss at Seton Hall with a guy that was in the Elite Eight in 2022, and the next game you get is at home against St. John's, against Rick Pitino, his first road game as a Big East head coach in a decade, and those two teams were picked outside of the top 6 of the Big East. So it's going to be war. It's going to be a battle. Listen, I'm going to throw in here at the end some audio from tonight's episode of After Dark. I was with Matt McCall. I was with John Henson. I'm going to cut to the conversation that we had about UConn there, because I do think that McCall and Henson both have a little bit of insightful and enlightening points. So I will allow them at this point to be able to go make them. So without further ado, we're going to cut to that. Field of 68 After Dark. Make sure you like, make sure you share, make sure you rate, make sure you review, make sure you do all those things that's going to make me happy as a podcaster. And hopefully when we have a conversation after Saturday's game, it'll be a little bit happier than this conversation was. But the place that we have to start, gentlemen, is down in Newark, where UConn got their asses absolutely handed to them by Seton Hall, who came into the game at 7-4. The final score of that game was 75-60. The big news, Donovan Clingan sprained his ankle. After the game, Dan Hurley told reporters that it was sprained. He doesn't know how long he's going to be out, but Clingan did walk out of the arena wearing a boot. Henson, we're going to you first on this one, man. UConn lost first game in the Big East on the road. Is this something that we need to be worried about? Is this just life on the road in the Big East? Make sense of this for me. Try to cheer me up, because this is the only thing that's cheering me up.
I'm not going to say who it was, but I was told to give you a hard time before you got on today. But I'm gonna let you live. It's tough. They're coming. I mean, I looked at their schedule: Texas at Kansas, UNC, Gonzaga. Like it's a tough spot to be in for your first game against a program that they just, for some reason, historically struggle with. That's kind of how we were when I played it with Georgia Tech. Don't know what it was. Don't know what was in the water. We could never really beat them, and if we did beat them, it was always a tough game. So, no reason to overreact. Seton Hall's relentless. They didn't stop. They kept coming. Richmond, 23-6-5.
8 steals. Don't forget about those 8 steals.
8 steals. Clingan going out of the game kind of affected them as well, because that was kind of something that they were going to at the time, who he was playing well. So tough spot to be in, but not going to overreact. UConn, they looked good. They fought. It was just Seton Hall's night. And like we said, historically, they've struggled with this team for some reason. That's a team they always have a problem with.
Yeah, McCall, I know you're going to talk some sense into me, man. You're Mr. Positivity on this show.
Look, it was a sloppy game for UConn. They just didn't play well, right? I mean, 17 turnovers and didn't shoot the basketball well from behind the perimeter. I mean, give Shaheen Holloway and Seton Hall all the credit in the world, but UConn just didn't play well. It was a sloppy game for them, and that's what happens. And I would love to ask Henson this too, just in terms of a player, but the conference game right before Christmas. I think that game right before Christmas as a coach was always a super challenge, just in terms of keeping your team engaged. The presents aren't going anywhere. Yes, you're going to leave, but you can't leave until the clock hits 0. And, I just think that's throwing the conference game in there is a little bit of a challenge, but UConn just played sloppy. And look, you talk about Seton Hall having their number. And I make this reference a lot of times, back to 06 and 07 when I was at the University of Florida, part of that staff. Like we couldn't never beat Bruce Pearl in Tennessee. We just couldn't do it, right? But we won back-to-back national championships. There's just some games and some teams that just seem to have your number. That doesn't mean they're not going to make a Final Four. It doesn't mean they're not going to win a national championship. It doesn't mean they're still not one of the best teams in the country. They just didn't play well. Didn't make shots and turn it over 17 times. I mean, that's a recipe to lose a game, especially on the road. And now everyone talks about UConn, blue blood. Are they a blue blood? Yeah, yes, of course they're a blue blood with what they've done. And I don't care, how do you define that? But you go on the road, you're playing a conference game, and everybody raises their level of play in conference, right? Everybody raises it. And especially on the road, you're getting every single team's best shot. So you got to be prepared for that. And Seton Hall played harder in this game. I mean, Hurley alluded to it. He said the film session's not going to be fun tomorrow. He's going to hold every single person in that program accountable. Man, I'd love to be a fly on the wall in that film room tomorrow to watch that. But they played harder. Seton Hall played harder. And when you play harder, you play more connected, you win. And UConn was just sloppy. I mean, you can't turn it over 17 times in a conference game on the road and not make threes. Oh, and by the way, lose your starting center to an ankle injury, who's your rim protector. Because it's not like Seton Hall was banging home threes. They're getting downhill. And if Donovan Clingan's back there, he's altering a bunch of those shots. He was out of that game. Seton Hall took complete advantage of it, and give them credit, give Shaheen Holloway credit. Great win for them.
Go ahead, Henson.
Oh, it was also some unlucky bounces, especially in the second half when they were trying to get back in the game. Just some unfortunate rolls and offensive boards. Now, credit to Seton Hall, they were getting to those 50-50 balls, but just one of those nights. It happens. Coach McCall, you actually brought up a good point as well. Looking into Christmas break, I never thought about it like that, but it is something that you are looking forward to, being home, taking a break, being with family and friends. When I was in school, Coach Williams was big on that. So definitely something that could have played a factor.
Yeah. For the people tracking alongside here, Creighton and Villanova are headed to overtime. Some weird referee reviewing stuff at the monitor there. I have it on mute, so I don't know exactly what was happening over there. But if you just see less than 5 seconds left in the game, odds are pretty good in a college basketball game. They're going to be referees looking at a monitor. I think that you guys are both right. Alex Karaman after the game said, this is a quote, if you don't show up ready to play in the Big East, you're going to get your ass kicked. And to me, that is exactly what happened in this matchup. I think that it was something where UConn overlooked Seton Hall, right? You're coming off of a game against Gonzaga. You have everybody talking about how you might be the best team in the country. Jim Boeheim is on this show saying that UConn is the best team in college basketball, and they just did not show up ready to play. I got a little bit of coping mechanisms for myself, so I'm going to put you guys through this for a second, okay? Mm-hmm. UConn has as many national championships in the last 20 years as they do conference opening victories. They are 4-16 in their last 20 conference openers. The last prior to last season, the last 3 times that they reached the Final Four and the last 2 times that they won the national title, they lost their season opener. Only 4 times since their last national title did they win have a conference opener victory. So it's just one of those things that happens. We saw Marquette get smacked at Providence. People probably regard Providence a little bit higher than they do Seton Hall at this point. We're watching Creighton right now struggle with a Villanova team that lost 3 games to Big 5 competition. It's just, it happens, man. It happens sometimes. And if you can kind of take this as a wake-up call, if you are UConn, then I think that that's probably the best way to view this. I'll have much more in-depth and longer rants if you want to listen to the Top Dogs podcast over on the Field of 68. That's my UConn podcast. So if you want to listen to that and hear me rant for 30 minutes about what the hell's going on with this program, this team, then that's something.
It's also very, and you and Goodman give me crap for this all the time. It's hard to win. It's hard to win.
It is.
It's hard to win. Winning is hard, and you're getting every single team's best shot every single night. They're not trying to defend the national championship. They're not defending anything. No one's taking that banner down, but they're still UConn. They got UConn across the front of their chest. They're one of the most successful programs in the history of college basketball. It's hard to win. They're going to have off nights. Like the podcasters and the media and the NBA, nobody ever reacts, like they lose one game. If the best team in the NBA loses one game, nobody ever overreacts. Basketball is different, right? In football, the bigger, faster, stronger team with a really good quarterback, generally 9.5 times out of 10 wins. In basketball, it's different. You can have an off night. You can miss shots. You could turn it over, or the other team could get hot behind the three-point line. Ask Purdue. Right? They've struggled in the NCAA tournament because of that. No need to overreact. They're still one of the best teams in the country. But listen, it's hard to win.